Now that the final toxicological report and that of the psychiatric consultants have been received and considered, it is my conclusion that the death of Marilyn Monroe was caused by a self-administered overdose of sedative drugs and that the mode of death is probable suicide.
Marilyn Monroe, the blonde bombshell who captivated millions, was more than just a Hollywood icon. She was a woman caught in a web of fame, power, and personal struggles. She was a top-billed actress for a decade. Her fame surpassed that of any other entertainer of her time, and by the time of her death in 1962, her 23 movies grossed a total of more than $200 million, equivalent to $2 billion in 2025. The morning of August 5th, 1962, dawned with a chilling stillness over Brentwood, Los Angeles. The world was about to wake up to the news that would send shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Marilyn Monroe, the iconic superstar, was found dead in her home at the age of 36. The official cause of death was listed as a barbiturate overdose and was ruled as a probable suicide. But as the years have passed, the circumstances surrounding her death have only grown murkier, shrouded in conspiracy theories, whispered secrets, and unanswered questions. Her death at such a young age left millions of fans devastated and sparked countless theories about what truly happened that fateful night. Was it a tragic accident, a calculated suicide, or something far more sinister? This is the story behind one of Hollywood's most enduring enigmas. Born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926, in Los Angeles, California, Marilyn Monroe was an American actress and model known for playing comic blonde bombshell characters. From an early age, her life was marked by instability and hardship. Her mother was frequently confined in an asylum, and Norma Jean was reared by 12 successive sets of foster parents and, for a time, in an orphanage. In 1942, at the age of 16, she married James Dougherty, a fellow worker in an aircraft factory, but they divorced soon after World War II in 1946. By the late 1940s, she had transformed into Marilyn Monroe, a dazzling blonde beauty whose charisma and talent captivated audiences worldwide. Her journey was one of resilience and reinvention, but it was also marked by profound loneliness and a desperate search for love and validation. The pressures of fame seemed to have taken a toll on her mental health. She suffered from insomnia, relied heavily on prescription drugs, and had a history of previous overdoses. Despite her struggles, she remained a sought-after actress and cultural icon, even as her personal life spiraled out of control. She starred in iconic films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Some Like It Hot, The 7-Year Itch, and The Misfits. But beneath her glamorous exterior lay a deeply sensitive woman who wrestled with insecurities, loneliness, and personal demons. Despite her success, Marilyn struggled with depression, substance abuse, and relationships fraught with emotional turmoil. Her quest for love and fulfillment often led her down painful paths, including 3 marriages to James Dougherty in 1946, Joe DiMaggio in 1954, and Arthur Miller in 1956. Her last film, The Misfits, released in 1961, was written by Miller specifically for Monroe, though their marriage disintegrated during production. They divorced in 1961. Marilyn Monroe was also rumored to be romantically involved with President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. These connections would later become central to the conspiracy theories surrounding her death. In the months leading up to her death, Marilyn's life seemed anything but stable. She had fallen ill with sinusitis before filming Something's Got to Give, but 20th Century Fox proceeded with production. Her illness caused frequent absences, leading the studio to accuse her of faking. During this time, on May 19, 1962, 77 days before her death, Monroe performed at President Kennedy's birthday event, fueling affair rumors. Fox later fired Monroe on June 7th, sued her for breach of contract, and shut down production after co-star Dean Martin refused to work without her. The studio blamed her for the film's failure, citing drug use and instability. To counter negative publicity, Monroe gave interviews to high-profile publications and eventually renegotiated her contract. Filming was set to resume in September, but unfortunately, she passed away in August 1962. Her personal life was equally tumultuous. At the time, Marilyn was romantically linked to both President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert F. Kennedy. These alleged affairs added layers of intrigue to her already complicated existence. While some accounts suggest these relationships were consensual and passionate, others hint at coercion or manipulation, given the Kennedys' powerful influence. During this time, Marilyn also became increasingly dependent on prescription medications prescribed by Dr. Hyman Engelberg and sought therapy from Dr. Ralph Greenson. Friends described her as increasingly withdrawn and despondent, often expressing fears about her future. Her reliance on barbiturates grew, and those close to her worried about her declining health. On the evening of Saturday, August 4th, 1962, Monroe spent her last day at her home, a modest Spanish-style house on 5th Helena Drive, Brentwood, Los Angeles. She was reportedly in good spirits, chatting on the phone with friends and making plans for the future. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was present, as was Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who had visited earlier in the day and claimed he urged her to get some rest. According to Murray, she retired to her room around 8 p.m. But at approximately 3:30 a.m. on Sunday, August 5th, Murray woke up, sensing that something was wrong, and saw light from under Monroe's bedroom door. But she was not able to get a response and found the door locked. When Murray didn't get a response, she called Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who arrived shortly after and broke into the room. They found Monroe lying nude on her bed, lifeless, clutching a telephone, with an empty bottle of sleeping pills nearby. Her doctor, Dr. Hyman Engelberg, also arrived shortly after at around 3:50 a.m. and pronounced her dead. The Los Angeles Police Department was called at 4:25 a.m., and by the time they arrived, Monroe was already pronounced dead. The official autopsy report concluded that Monroe died of acute barbiturate poisoning, with high levels of nembutal and chloral hydrate in her system. The coroner ruled her death a probable suicide, citing her history of depression and drug use.
Now that the final toxicological report and that of the psychiatric consultants have been received and considered, it is my conclusion that the death of Marilyn Monroe was caused by a self-administered overdose of sedative drugs, and that the mode of death is probable suicide.
However, many close to Monroe found this explanation hard to believe. She had been making plans for future projects and seemed to be looking forward to a new chapter in her life. Could she really have taken her own life? Some have suggested that her death was accidental, the result of a miscalculated dose of medication. Monroe was known to have trouble sleeping and often relied on sedatives. It's possible that in a groggy state she ingested more pills than intended, but even this theory leaves many questions unanswered. From the moment news broke of Marilyn's death, speculations ran rampant. Many aspects of the case didn't add up, and several key factors contributed to the confusion and skepticism surrounding her death. First was the discrepancies in police reports. The initial report stated that only 2 empty pill bottles were found near Marilyn's body. However, later investigations revealed discrepancies in the number and types of medications present. Some witnesses claimed seeing additional pills scattered around the room, raising doubts about how they ended up there. Records showed numerous calls made from Marilyn's phone in the hours before her death. Strangely, several of these calls went unaccounted for, including alleged attempts to reach the Kennedys. Critics argue that important evidence may have been tampered with or erased. For instance, why were certain calls not logged properly? Could someone have intercepted or blocked these communications? Another compelling piece of evidence that has fueled conspiracy theories is the so-called Red Diary. According to some sources, Monroe kept a diary in which she documented her relationships with the Kennedy brothers and other powerful figures. This diary, if it ever existed, has never been found. Some believe it was destroyed to protect the reputations of those involved. Over the years, alternative explanations have also emerged. Some claimed accidental overdose. Supporters of this theory argue that Marilyn accidentally took a lethal combination of drugs while trying to treat her insomnia. Her erratic behavior and dependency on medication make this scenario plausible. Another hypothesis suggests that Marilyn staged her own death to escape her troubled life, leaving behind carefully crafted clues to support the suicide narrative. Proponents of this theory cite inconsistencies in the official account and claim that Marilyn's disappearance would allow her to start anew. Moreover, the coroner's report failed to address critical details, such as the exact amount of drugs in Marilyn's system and the method by which they entered her body. Some experts suspect foul play based on the absence of needle marks, suggesting ingestion rather than injection. During the 1960s, there were many conspiracies about Monroe's death. But the most widespread conspiracy theories about Monroe's death were the allegations contained in anti-communist activist Frank Capel's self-published pamphlet, The Strange Death of Marilyn Monroe, in 1964. Capel's pamphlet alleged that Monroe was murdered as part of a communist conspiracy involving Robert F. Kennedy. These claims seemed to be largely politically motivated and lacked credible evidence. Furthermore, in the 1970s, mainstream interest in the murder theory grew with Norman Mailer, Robert Slatzer, and Anthony Scaduto, who speculated about Monroe's affairs with the Kennedys and the involvement of the CIA or FBI, though much of their information was also questionable. The 1980s also saw further conspiracy claims, with Milo Spiriglio and Anthony Summers suggesting mob involvement or a staged cover-up, but these theories were discredited due to unreliable sources. In the 1990s and 2000s, figures like Donald Wolfe and John Miner continued to push theories of murder or medical malpractice, but their accounts lacked solid evidence. Miner even claimed to have transcripts of tapes Monroe recorded, though their authenticity was widely doubted. Following the many allegations that Marilyn's death was murder and not suicide, the Los Angeles County District Attorney John Van de Kamp ordered a review. He had assigned his colleague Ronald Carroll to conduct a 1982 threshold investigation to see whether a criminal investigation should be opened. Carroll worked with Alan Tomich, an investigator for the District Attorney's Office, for over 3 months on an inquiry that resulted in a 30-page report. They did not find any credible evidence to support the theory that Monroe was murdered. In 1983, Noguchi, who was the deputy coroner that conducted autopsy on Marilyn's body, published his memoirs in which he discussed Monroe's case and the allegations of discrepancies in the autopsy and the coroner's ruling of suicide. These included the claims that Monroe could not have ingested the pills because her stomach was empty, that Nembutal capsules should have left yellow residue, that she may have been administered an enema, and that the autopsy noted no needle marks despite the fact that she routinely received injections from her doctors. Noguchi explained that hemorrhaging of the stomach lining indicated that the medication had been administered orally, and that because Monroe had been an addict for several years, the pills would have been absorbed more rapidly than in the case of non-addicts. Noguchi also denied that Nembutal leaves dye residue, and he noted that only very recent needle marks are visible on a body, and that the only bruise he noted on Monroe's body, on her lower back, was superficial, and its placement indicated that it was accidental and not linked to foul play. Noguchi finally concluded that based on his observations, the most probable conclusion is that Monroe committed suicide. By the 2010s, Monroe's niece, Mona Ray Miracle, further dismissed the conspiracy theories, stating that Monroe had plans for the future, suggesting her death was likely an accidental overdose rather than murder. 50 years after her death, Marilyn Monroe continues to fascinate and inspire. Her image endures as a symbol of timeless beauty and vulnerability. Yet, the truth about her final moments remains elusive. New theories continue to emerge, and old ones are re-examined in light of new evidence. While we may never know the full truth, Monroe's legacy transcends the circumstances of her demise. Her story remains a cautionary tale of fame, vulnerability, and the dark forces that lurk behind Hollywood's glittering facade. Marilyn Monroe's life and death are a testament to the complexities of fame and the human condition. Her story is one of triumph and tragedy, of beauty and pain, and of a mystery that may never be solved. As we remember her, we are reminded of the fragility of life and the enduring power of a legend. What do you think really happened to Marilyn Monroe? Did she take her own life in a moment of despair? Was she silenced by forces beyond her control? Perhaps we'll never know for certain. What we do know is that Marilyn Monroe left an indelible mark on history, a brilliant star extinguished too soon, leaving behind a legacy as luminous as her smile. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and consider subscribing to get updates on my future stories. Until next time, goodbye.